Shabbat shalom. Welcome as people join us from their waiting room, from our waiting room. Glad to be with you all on this first Shabbat of 2021. Welcome in. May the angel who keeps me from harm bless the ones who come after. May the angel who keeps me from harm bless the ones who come after. Hamalach hagoel oti mikora yivarech et hane'arim. Hamalach hagoel oti mikora yivarech et hane'arim. Just warming up here with a verse from this week's Torah reading. As Jacob, the grandfather, blesses his grandsons, saying, "May the angel who blessed me also bless you. May the angel who keeps me from harm bless the ones who come after. May the angel who keeps me from harm bless the ones who will come after. Hamalach, hamalach, hagoel oti mikora, yivarech et hane'arim. Hamalach hagoel oti mikora, yivarech et hane'arim. May the angel who keeps me from harm bless the ones who come after. May the angel who keeps me from harm bless the ones who will come after. Welcome everyone. Shabbat shalom. It's good to be all together this morning as we welcome in a new year together. Bear with me 1 second. Special thanks to our marvelous Gabayim this morning. We'll begin our morning prayers, page 141 in our Siddur. Beginning this new year with words that are known well to us and inviting in some contemporary language for our prayers. Page 141. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Israel. And the last line, 141. Vani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon Elohim berov chasdecha aneni be'emet yishecha. Morning blessings, page 151. It's the custom to rise in our bodies, our spirits, as we're able. Page 151. Beginning our prayers with a reminder of the commandment to treat each other with love and kindness. לשם ייחוד קודשה בריך שכינתה, הנני מוכן ומזומן לקבל עליי מצוות עשה של ואהבת לרעך כמוך, ובזכות זה אפתח פי. 153. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, המעביר שינה מעיניי ותנומה מעפעפיי. Next page. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, הנותן לשכל בינה להבחין בין יום ובין לילה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, רוקה הארץ על המים. 157. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, פוקח עברים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, מלביש ערומים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, מתיר אסורים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, זוקף כפופים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, המכין מצעדי גבר. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, שעשה לי כל צורכי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, עוזר ישראל בגבורה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, עוטר ישראל בתפארה. 161. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, שעשני בצלמו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, שעשני בת חורים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, שעשני ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי העולמים, הנותן ליעף כוח. We can be seated. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר יצר את האדם. ברוך אתה אדוני רופא כל בשר ומפליא לעשות. 165. אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא, אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא, אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא, אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא. אתה וראת יצרת ואתה משמרה בקרבי, ואתה תילה ממני לחיי עולם. 167. With a deep breath. כל זמן שהנשמה בקרבי, מודה אני לפניך, אדוני אלוהי ואלוהי אבותיי ואימותיי, ריבון כל המעשים, אדון כל הנשמות. ברוך אתה אדוני, אשר בידו נפש כל חי ורוח כל בשר. We'll turn now to warm ourselves up for praise with verses from the Psalms, but I first share with you some verses that have been composed for our time in the spirit of our ancient language. אם תקראי לאדמה אם שהולידה אותך בעצב, מרחמי האימהות מחווה עד עכשיו. אם תקרא לעולם חבר שתומך בך ביום צרה וביום שמחה, אם תקראי ליקום עזר כנגדך, הנותן כוח לחולשתך וגם לעצמתך, אז תצטרף אליי בשירים אלה, אז תצטרף אליי בשירים אלה, ונשירה יחד בעולם, שממלא מעיינותינו ברכות. Page 177. ברוך שאמר והיה העולם, ברוך הוא, ברוך עושה בראשית, ברוך שמו, ברוך אומר ועושה, ברוך הוא, ברוך גוזר ומקיים, ברוך שמו, ברוך מרחם על הארץ, ברוך הוא, ברוך מרחם על הבריות, ברוך שמו, ברוך משלם שכר טוב לרעב, ברוך הוא, ברוך מעביר אפלה ומביא אורה, ברוך שמו, ברוך הילד וקיים לנצח, ברוך הוא, ברוך פודה ומציל, ברוך הוא וברוך שמו. And 181 last lines. יחיד חיי העולמים, מלך משובח ומפרדי עד שמו הגדול, ברוך אתה אדוני, מלך מהולל, בתשבחות. We say Amen. Page 209 now. Psalm for Shabbat. Tov lehodot l'Adonai ולזמר לשמך העליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור. Good to give thanks. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך העליון. Now כי שימחתני, it's a joy for me. כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשה ידיך ארנן, מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך, מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. Now just turn over the next page, the final verses of the psalm, honoring the full span of a lifetime and finding words of praise across that lifetime. Tzadik katamar yifrach, ke'erez balvanon yizkeh, shetulim bebeit Adonai, bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu, od ינובון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני, צורי ולא עוולת בו. Page 231. כל הנשמה תהלל bottom of 231. Baruch Adonai leolam, amen ve'amen. Baruch Adonai mitzion, shochen Yerushalayim, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim Elohei Yisrael, oseh niflaot levado. Ubaruch Shem kevodo leolam, v'yimalech kevodo et kol haaretz. Amen ve'amen. Ask us to turn now to the back of our Siddur, which has several beautiful modern liturgies offered to us. Page 740. Words from our poet Leah Goldberg, in which she invites us to say to God, to speak personally to God. She says, Lambeni Elohai, teach me, my God, barech v'hitpalel, how to pray. Page 740. Lamdeni Elohai, barech v'hitpalel, al sod alekamel, al noga pri vashel, al ha'cherut hazot lirot, lachush linshom, לדעת לייחל להיקשר. למד את שפתותיי, למד את שפתותיי ברכה ושיר הלל. והתחדש זמנך עם בוקר ועם ליל. לבל יהיה יומי היום כתמול שלשום. לבל יהיה עלי יומי הרגל. למד את שפתותיי, teach my lips. למד את שפתותיי ברכה ושיר הלל. והתחדש זמנך עם בוקר ועם ליל. לבל יהיה יומי היום כתמול שלשום. לבל יהיה עלי יומי הרגל. Now the opening line one last time. למדני אלוהי ברך From here, we call ourselves now to our calling ourselves together to our Baruch Hu. Page 247. And again, the custom to rise here. And just to enjoy the custom of rising all together, of feeling the blessing of the full height of our architecture, our ability to bend our knee in gratitude, to open our heart in prayer. So we all stand, page 247. And if at least one person would be willing to unmute to make the communal response, I'd be so grateful. Could be several. Barechu et Adonai hamevorach.
Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam vaed.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvorech choshech, oseh shalom, uvoreh et hakol. 249. Hakol yoducha ve'akol yeshabechucha ve'akol yomru ein kadosh kadonai. And 249, last lines. Hameir la'aretz ve'ladarim aleha berachamim uvetuvo mechadesh bechol yom tamid. Ma'aseh v'reishit. 251. Hamelech hamarom levado me'az המשובח ומפאר מתנשא ממות עולם. Now middle of the paragraph, אין קרקך ואין זולתך, אפס פלטך ומדומה לך. אין קרקך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין זולתך מלכנו לחיי העולם הבא. אפס פלטך גואלנו למות המשיח, ואין דומה לך מושיענו לחיי עולמים. 253 or 255. אל אדון על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך בפי כל נשמה, גודלו וטובו מלא עולם, דת ותבונה סובבים אותו, המתקהל חיות הקודש ונדר בכבוד, על המרכבה זכות ומישור לפני כיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו, טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו, יצרם בדעת בבינה ובחסקל, כוח וגבורה נתן בהם, להיות מושלים בקרב תבל, מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה, נאה זיום בכל העולם, שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים בהם הרצון קונם, פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמו, צהלה ורינה לזכר מלכותו, קר על השמש ויזרח אור, רע והתקין צורת הלבנה, שבח נותנים לו, קוצבה מרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ואופנים, שרפים ואופנים, וחיות הקודש, לי, 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 $269 אורך חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכח לנו במהרה לאורו, ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות. 273. Ahava Rabba, Ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu. Ahava רבה, אהבה רבה, אהבתנו, Adonai Eloheinu. And one last, Ahava Rabbah, Ahavtanu, Adonai Eloheinu. חמלה גדולה ותרחמת עלינו, אבינו מלכנו בעבור אבותינו ואמותינו, שבטחו בך ותלמדם חוקי חיים, כן תכוננו תלמדנו, אבינו אב הרחמן, המרחם רחם עלינו, ותן בליבנו להבין ולהשכיל, לשמוע וללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה. 275 והאר עינינו בתורתך ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך ויחד לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך ולא נבוש ולא ניכלם ולא ניכשל לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך. והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול. סלע באמת להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Take time now to reflect on these middle passages. Invite us to follow along the words in the book, but I also at this moment would like to share with you an alternative translation of the traditional middle passage of the Shema, the one that's labeled in our Siddur as Biblical Selection 2. The Hebrew here is on page 283. This is the place where our ancestors harnessed words from the Torah to teach us about how our tradition, our legacy, our lineage, our unique path, our unique history, our unique destiny also has a share in protecting this planet. V'haya im shamoa. How good it will be when you really listen and hear my directions, which I give to you today. For loving Yud-He Vav-He, who is your God, and to act godly with feeling and inspiration, your earthly needs will be met at the right time, appropriate to the season. You will reap what you planted for your delight and health. Also, your animals will have ample feed. All of you will eat and be content. But hishamru lachem, be careful, watch out. Don't let your cravings delude you. Don't become alienated. Don't let your cravings become your gods. Don't debase yourself to them, because the God sense within you will become distorted. Heaven will be shut to you. Grace will not descend. Earth will not yield her produce. Your rushing will destroy you, and earth will not be able to recover her good balance in which God's gifts are manifest. May these values of mine reside in your feelings and aspirations, marking what you produce, guiding what you perceive. Teach them to your children so that they are instructed how to make their homes sacred and how to deal with traffic, even when you are depressed and when you are elated. Mark your entrances and exits with them so you will be more aware. Then you and your children and their children will live out on earth that divine promise given to your ancestors to live heavenly days right here on this earth. Kimei hashamayim al haaretz. And now continuing with the final paragraph of the Shema in Hebrew together, page 285. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem, vasulam tzitzit al kanfei vigdehem ledorotam, ve'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf patil techelet, ve'haya lachem, and behold for you letzitzit, these fringes, uritem oto, and look at them, uzachartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, and be mindful of all the commandments of Yod-He Vav-He, va'asitem otam, and do your best to do them. Velo taturu acharei levavchem ve'acharei nechem, and don't be distracted after the wanderings of your heart and the wanderings of your eyes, asher atem zonim achareihem, which may actually sometimes be really not good for you. Leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'tem kadoshim leloechem, for the sake that you may remember and do all of these commandments, and therefore potentially be holy to your God. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti etchem meretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem leElohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. Pause here just for a moment before we continue We have before us the ancient and timeless song of freedom to share together, to bring us together once again to that communal memory. And then into this morning's Amidah. And this morning, I invite us to come into the Amidah quietly, each one of us on our own, together in this wonderful electronic minyan, under this beautiful tent of ours, to have time to pray the Amidah on our own. And then I'll share together a reprise, a traditional way of coming together at the end of the Amidah with some contemporary language, and finally to bring us together to our prayer for peace. So first to page 291, and to lift up that memory of freedom. Tilot Lael Elyon, Baruch Hu Mevorach, Moshe uMiriam uBnei Yisrael, Lecha anu shira besimcha rabah, ve'amru chulam. Join me, please. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, nora tehilot osef eleh. שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים לשמחה על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו. Rising now, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופתחי נאומך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני Yisrael.
Just stop ringing.
You're muted, Rachel.
I know, thank you. Just giving people a chance to finish their own prayers. So taking our time with those prayers. And now bringing ourselves back into community together. Allowing the strength of all our individual prayers to weave together, even across these distances, to make us into one voice. And just a very brief reprise of all those 7 themes of the Amidah. We'll begin with the opening verse in the Hebrew. It's on page 295 in your Siddur if you'd like to see it there. Asking for the strength of the Creator to help us open our mouths in prayer, even here at the end. Adonai Sifatai Tiftach Ufi Agi Tehilatecha Adonai Sifatai Tiftach Ufi Agi Blessings from our ancestors, blessings when we live in our power, blessings when we live in holiness, blessings on this day, on this Sabbath day, on this blessed day. blessing of your presence. Return to our presence. So thankful for this life, for the blessings of this life, for this beautiful life, for the blessings of this life. Join me to pray for peace now. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimrona. We ask shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei Page 381 in our Siddur. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיידךו בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן.
אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ועולמי אמן.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. תתקבל צלותון ובאות דהון דכל בית ישראל קודם אבוהון וישמעיה ואמרו אמן.
אמן.
יהי שלום רב מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
אמן.
עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
Thank you so much, David Saradsky, for being the voice of the congregation this morning. Just take a pause here as we transition from our morning prayers now into our Torah service. I've been, this phrase, this sentence has been rolling around in my head. I admit it's not particularly reconstructionist, but the idea, the teaching that comes from our tradition that during our prayers we talk to God, and in the Torah we listen to God speaking to us. And so we turn to that ancient text with our prayers, hopefully having opened ourselves up to hear whatever truths we need to hear this morning. I ask you to join with me now, page 387. Page 387. Be'anarachetz velishme kadisha kadisha yakira ana amartu shbechan be'anarachetz velishme Shme Kadisha, Kadisha Yakira, Ana Amartu Shpechan, Yerava Kodamach, Tiftach Libi Beoraita, Vetashlim Mishalim Delibi, Veliba Dechol Amach Yisrael, Letabul Chaim, Velishlam. Amen. Page 393. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Adon Eloheinu, Kadosh Shemo.
Adonai iti unero mema Shemo yachdav. Settle ourselves now in for some Torah reading, and later a little bit later this morning, some Torah study. I don't know how many people got a chance to see just the simple notes that we put in our social solidarity announcement for just yesterday, I think. Have a chance to study Torah together after the formal prayers are finished, including the Torah reading. So for now, I'll just orient us to share that we're reading from the final parasha of the book of Genesis this morning. We'll be closing the book of Genesis just as we've closed the year 2020. I don't know if there's some meaning in that coincidence. We hear the final words of Jacob, and then at the end of the parasha of Joseph. And this morning's reading will zoom right in, no pun intended, on chapter 49, which is the layout of Jacob's final words to his children just before he dies. And as for those that are familiar with this chapter, we know that we can't exactly call these blessings. They are final words. And Jacob at the end of his life feels perhaps especially honest and clear. So he begins with quite a rebuke for his son Reuven, for Shimon and Levi, and then finally we'll hear him speak to his son Yehudah, Judah, for whom he has some more encouraging words. And then finally to the end of the parasha, where we listen to Joseph's final command to his family to take him with them when they go forward, as they will someday do from Egypt. So with that, let's begin the Torah reading. I want to give a special heartfelt word of gratitude to our, I can't even call them Gabayim this morning, Phyllis Lerner and Martha Hare. We're going to invite several members of the community for Aliyot this morning who have been assigned and honored just this morning. So I want to thank those who have stepped up to the plate. Our reading begins with Genesis 49, verse 1. Genesis chapter 49, verses 1 through 4. In your older Chumash, page 308. In the newer Chumash, page 309, almost the same. Our first reader is Malka Kutnick, and our first aliyah will be Phyllis Lerner. And I've asked Phyllis if she would take that aliyah in recognition of this first yahrzeit for our very dear beloved friend Anne Mazanson, who passed just a year ago at this time. So turn to you, Phyllis, first for the bracha, and then Malka for the reading.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotov, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen. Vayikra Yaakov el banav, vayomer, ha'asefu ve'agida lachem et asher yikra etchem be'acharit hayamim, hikavetzu ve'shim'u b'nei Yaakov ve'shim'u el Yisrael avichem, Reuven bechori ata, kochi v'reshit oni, yeter se'et ve'yeter ahaz, pachaz kamayim al totar, ki alita mishkeve avicha, az chilalta yetsui Allah.
Baruch atah Adonai hamelamed Torah lamo Yisrael.
Amen. And Yishar Kochech, Malka, and to Phyllis for helping us hold up Anne's memory. I want to acknowledge this as a fitting closure to this year, this first year since Anne left us. And Phyllis, at the time that Anne made her final descent, you were overseas in Rwanda. And we were able to stay in touch with you through the miracle of modern technology. But we know that you didn't have the same chance as many of the rest of us did to say a personal farewell and to be present for Anne's funeral and burial. And so it feels very fitting to us to be able to call you forward for this aliyah as we all remember her. Remember her on our bima, remember her in our choir, remember her in our congregation. I spoke with Pam Summers just in the last day or so, and she was sharing some memories of Anne and wishing so much that, that we could share with Anne how we've made it through this year together. And my thought to Pam was, well, if you connect with Anne, please tell her we desperately miss her and we're desperately glad that she's not here to live through all of this with us. So thank you, Phyllis, and thank you to everyone who's been a presence in helping us remember Anne. I'm looking at so many in our community right now. So we'll continue now with the second reading. And before we go on there, I'm making note that Gabayim have let me know we still don't have an aliyah for the Maftir reading. We don't like to put anyone on the spot. A message did go out to you, BJ Davis, if you're coming.
We know, sorry, Rachel, I was just about to let you know we do.
Oh, great. Okay. Excellent. Never mind, BJ. Thank you all for your flexibility and good humor. Okay, so we'll now go to the second aliyah, and we have the pleasure of calling forth Ethel Kessler as the second honoree and Kayla Niles to be our reader. Don't forget to unmute.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen. Shimon v'Levi, achim, klei chamas v'cherotehem. V'sodam al tavo nafshi, v'kalam al techad kvodi, כי באפם הרגו איש, וברצונם יקרו שור. ארור אפם כי עוז, ואת בעברתם תקשתה. אך על כן ליעקב ויפיצם בישראל.
Baruch atah Adonai hamlamed Torah li'amo Yisrael.
Amen.
Amen. Yishar kochech. Gam to Ethel and also to Kayla. We'll continue now with the third reading. Rabbi George, who will be the reader and the honoree, I believe.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Yehuda atah yoducha achicha yadcha be'oref oivecha yishtachavu lecha b'nei avicha. Gur Aryeh Yehuda miteref b'ni alita kara ravatz k'aryeh uchlavi mi yikimenu lo yasur shehevet mehuda umechokek mi bein raglav ad Ki yavo Shiloh v'lo kehatamim osri lagefen iro v'la'asoreka b'ni atono ki beis bayayin levusho uvedam manavim suto hachlili einayim meyayin Uleven shaniyai shinayim mechalav. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam melamed Torah le'amo Yisrael.
Amen. Yishar koach. Rabbi George, for your beautiful reading. And it's fine with me if we stop right there at Yehuda and hear some beautiful words from Jacob and save the rebuke for our own private reading that he continues for the rest of his sons. We'll pause here now and turn to Beth Sperber Ritchie to lead us in our prayers for healing.
So as we have been doing throughout this period of time, as we bring the people into our hearts who we are thinking of, who need physical healing, emotional healing, spiritual healing. If you want to take a moment and put their names in the chat. I'm always so moved seeing the names in the chat. I don't know if you all feel that it really is the opportunity to put that person out there, but I'm always watching them scroll by, and it both reminds me of all the people who we need to hold, but also that we're not alone in holding those people. So I send that to all of you in the hopes that it also will hold you, that other people are also in that same place where you are trying so hard to hold yourself and to hold the person who needs healing. So as the names scroll by and we all hear and see them, I see a number of people have put the Jamie Raskin's family in the chat. It's a very hard one. My girls went to school with his son, and it's a hard one for all of us to hold when someone so young dies, and just to hold that whole family and extended family of friends and folks who are touched by that death. So if we all take a deep breath and join together very simply in the words Ana Elna Rafana La. Ana Elna, Ana Elna, Ana Elna Rafana La. Ana Elna, Ana Elna, Ana Elna Refana Lo. Ana Elna, Ana Elna, Ana Elna Refana La. Ana Elna, Ana Elna, Ana Elna Refana Lo. A healing of mind, body, spirit, a refuah shlema.
Amen ve'amen. Move now with these prayers, these names, these images in our mind to the Maftir reading for this morning, the very end of the book of Genesis. And as we follow the custom of our people to rise together at the end of the reading and acknowledge the completion, another completion of the book of Genesis, we'll turn now to Genesis chapter 50, verse 23, and turn to Marcia Teichman to be our reader. And sorry, I don't know who the honoree is.
Her husband.
Wonderful. Kevin Teichman will be the honoree for this closing of Genesis.
And I would be glad to share it with B.J. Davis as we share the same anniversary, many years apart and to different spouses, I hasten to add. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedushanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen. Vayar Yosef Ephraim b'nei Shileshim Gam b'nei Machir ben Menashe Yoldu al Birkei Yosef. Vayomer Yosef Elechav Anochi made Velohim Pakod yifkod etchem ve'ela etchem min haaretz hazot el haaretz asher nishpa li'Avraham li'Yitzhak li'Yaakov vayashba Yosef et bnei Yisrael lemor pakod yifkod Elohim etchem v'ha'alitem et atzmotai mizeh vayamat Yosef ben 110 shanim vayachatnu oto vayisem ba'aron b'Mitzrayim.
Rise together.
Chazak chazak v'nitchazek.
Chazak chazak v'nitchazek.
Baruch atah Adonai hamelamed Torah le'amo Yisrael.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. It almost feels too quick to just say, okay, chazak, chazak, let's move on. But that is, in fact, the nature of life, is it not? To acknowledge the history and to carry on with the moment. So I want to say thank you so much to our readers this morning and to our honorees who stepped forward so that we could hear the Torah read this morning. As Rabbi Fred and I shared both last Shabbat and this Shabbat, we wanted to insert some contemporary versions of liturgy into the service. This is a tradition that's time honored in Jewish tradition of allowing the liturgy to continue to evolve as an expression of our authentic wishes, our authentic prayers, our authentic needs. So at this time, we would normally lift the Torah and say, V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe. This is the Torah that was placed before the children of Israel by Moses, B'yad Moshe, written in the hand of Moses. I'd like to share with us an alternative formula for this to acknowledge the completion of the Torah reading for today, perhaps since we've just finished Genesis for this season. And this is a version that I learned from Herbert Levine, whose liturgy I've shared a couple of times this morning already, and Rabbi Fred did last Shabbat. Herb Levine is a poet and writer and liturgist, and he will be joining us starting January 13th for some special learning opportunities to look at ways that our liturgy has room in it, within the tradition, for us to continue expanding it and exploring it. So let me share on screen. So this is simple, one sentence, but in Herb Levine's version, we acknowledge a little bit more of the history that connects our moment to the moment of Sinai. Let me open this up a little bit more. There. So here we'll say, V'zot HaTorah asher sam Ezra, lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi mesorah b'yad Moshe. This is the Torah that Ezra, the first, as far as we know, the first Torah scribe, the one who was really the ancestor of rabbinic Judaism, of the rabbinic tradition, who put the Torah at the center of Jewish life, who was with our ancestors in the period we know as Shivat Zion, the return from the exile, and who was famously brought the Torah into the community in a most physical way. We say, I can't even see the words myself. Al pi mesorah, according to tradition, b'yad Moshe, and we connect ourselves back to Sinai. So join me, please, same melody. V'zot HaTorah asher sam Ezra, lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi mesorah b'yad Moshe. I want to take just a few minutes and lift up the Haftara for this morning. You can find it in your Chumash in, I should start first to say it's taken from 1 Kings chapter 2. It's in the newer Plaut Chumash on page 323. And I don't know if anybody has the older Plaut, if you have a page number. Actually, it's 359 in the older version, the original version. Thank you, Martha. We're here lifting up the image of King David at the end of his life as a parallel to Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, and to Joseph at the end of their lives, ensuring the future before they make their final departure. And here King David is speaking to his son, Shlomo. Begin with the opening bracha and ask you to please join me. Chant along with me. I'm going to chant just the opening and close of the Haftara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'neviim tovim ורצה בדבריהם הנאמרים באמת. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו ובנביאי האמת והצדק. ויקרבו ימי דוד למות ויצב את שלמה בנו לאמור אנוכי הולך בדרך כל הארץ וחזקת והיית לאיש ושמרת את משמרת אדוני אלוהיך ללכת בדרכיו לשמור חוקותיו ומצוותיו ומשפטיו ועדותיו ככתוב בתורת משה למען תשכיל את כל אשר תעשה ואת כל אשר תפנה שם למען יקים אדוני את דברו אשר דיבר אליו לאמור אם ישמרו בניך את דרכם ללכת לפניי באמת בכל לבבם ובכל נפשם לאמור לא יכרת לך איש מעל כיסא ישראל. And I'll skip now to verse 10, the very ending. וישכב דוד עם אבותיו ויקבר בעיר דוד והימים אשר מלך דוד על ישראל 40 שנה בחברון מלך 7 שנים ובירושלים מלך 33 שנים ושלמה ישב על כיסא דוד אביו ותיכון מלכותו מאוד. Closing blessings. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam צור כל העולמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, האל הנאמן, האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ונאמנים דבריך, ודבר אחד מדבריך, אחור לא ישוב ריקם. כי המלך נאמן ורחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הנאמן בכל דבריו. And I'll skip to the final section. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, נקדש השבת.
Amen.
Before we close the Torah service and come to the end of our prayers, ask us to turn to a prayer for our country. We've crossed over the threshold of a new year, and that crossing of that threshold brings with it so many hopes for our new season, for our country, perhaps also for our world, but for this moment, I invite us to turn our prayers especially to our own United States of America and look with hope and optimism and faith towards January 6th, towards January 20th, and beyond. I ask us to rise together, page 419, and read together. Let's all read aloud the alternative blessing for the country at the bottom of page 419. Please, let's join together. Page 419. What do I desire for my country? How do I vision the land I love? Let it be a land where knowledge is free, where the mind is without fear and men and women hold their heads high, where words come from the depth of truth, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where tireless striving stretches its arms toward perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way in the dreamy desert sand of habit, where the mind is led forward into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom. Let my country awake. One final modern liturgy for acknowledging the gift of the Torah. You can join me, please, in whichever language you prefer. Zot HaTorah, shenichteva al yedei bnei Adam, meshech dorot dorot. Shesam Ezra lifnei bnei Yisrael b'shem Moshe. Shesikem hazaken Hillel, me'ot shanim acharei Ezra. Ma shesan'u alecha al ta'aseh lechavrecha. V'hayeter perush shechedei lilmod. V'achar kach ta'aseh ma shetzarich. Let's join together, page 441. Etz chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomcheha meushar teracheha tachenoam v'chol netivoteh shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kekedem. Let's remain standing, please, and turn with me to page 126 in your Siddur, page 126. To begin first with words from Rabbi Rami Shapiro, and then continue with the traditional Aleinu, page 126. Please join me aloud. It is up to us to hallow creation, to respond to life with the fullness of our lives. It is up to us to meet the world, to embrace the whole, even as we wrestle with its parts. It is up to us to repair the world and to bind our lives to truth. Therefore, we bend the knee and shake off the stiffness that keeps us from the subtle graces of life and the supple gestures of love. With reverence and thanksgiving, we accept our destiny and set for ourselves the task of redemption, page 121. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שנתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים. על כן נקווה. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. We can be seated. We have some difficult losses to acknowledge in our community. I want to first send our love and our comfort to Jody Shapiro and her entire extended family on the loss of her beloved mother, Jerry Markoff. The funeral was this past week, and Shiva observed this past week, and it was inspiring to hear Jody and Steve and Ariel and Sally and other members of the family share their memories of this beloved mother, grandmother. We also, of course, as we already said, we want to acknowledge this first yortzeit of Anne Mazanson. Want to acknowledge the passing of Myrna Cruz, John Grossman's beloved aunt. And as so many placed in the chat during the healing prayer, our hearts go out to the extended Raskin family on the loss of their young son, Thomas Raskin. I know that there will be many expressions of love and comfort sent to the family, and I know that our community will be among those many voices. We also want to acknowledge losses in this past month. Our beloved Shirley Goldsmith, it's a light in this community, Rabbi Manny's wife, Mirala and Laser and Rachel's stepmom, and dear friend to so many of us. And Jody Lipson on the loss of her stepmother, Arlene Lipson, and Lori Persh on the loss of her mother, Beatrice Cuff. I'll share the names of the yortzeits that I've been given and invite us to add any names into the chat that are being lifted up for memory at this moment. Clayton Joseph Clausen, Lance Clausen's father. Dorothy Franklin, Gila Siegel's mother. Judith Frosch, mother of Brian Frosch. Samuel Hellman, Steve Hellman's father. Judith Rosner, Harold Jaffe's sister. Dr. Morton Winston, Molly Winston's father. Fanny Klein, Shari Book's grandmother. Yetta Kopp, Ted Kleinman's grandmother. Ruth Rosenthal, Ann Rosenthal's mother. Esther Hopen, Michelle Mellinger's grandmother. Martin Canefield, Linda Canefield's father. Arthur Samuels, Mike Samuels' father. Belle Zuch, Deborah Friedman's Deborah Fried Levin's grandmother, Maria Byrne, David Byrne's mother, Sam Climo, Ann Burke's father, Max Simon, Cheryl Silver's father, Abe Spiritus, Bob Spiritus's father, Harold Manikin, Harriet Sugarman's uncle, Martin Miller, Allison Moser's father, Harry Schulman, Deborah Schulman-Holzer's father, Sam Stein, Iris Stein-Corman's father, Gerald Baum, Stu Baum's father, Florence Book, Alan Book's mother, Gilda Morse, Minna Sherlander Morse's mother, and Alice Sperber, Beth Sperber Ritchie's grandmother. And all those and any others who have been named here, invite those in mourning or observing a yortzeit to please rise. The Kaddish is on page 451. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah. Be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei dekudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shamaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. Yehi zichram baruch. May all of those in our memories be a source of blessing as we find our way forward. Thank you all so much for tuning in for our morning service. I want to turn to Jen Sherman, our board member and chair of our Religious Practices Committee, for some greetings, and then we'll transition to some Torah study.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. On behalf of the Adat Shalom board, I want to welcome everyone to our first Shabbat of 2021. Wishing everybody a healthy, meaningful, and vaccinated year. I want to invite you to place in the chat a one word, a wish or a blessing that you might want to offer the entire community. And we'll read them and hopefully feel some of that love and joy and blessing going forward as we press into the new year. Please remember to take a look at our Social Solidarity e-bulletin that comes out twice weekly for all of our upcoming events and offerings. Again, Shabbat Shalom to everybody and a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much, Jen. And thank you for the invitation to place our prayers into the chat. We will certainly hold on to them.